Welcome again to From the Heart. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate all of the new subscribers, all of you who comment. I really, really do appreciate your support of this channel. And I hope that today this will be a blessing to you. So I want to talk about emotions. That is such a wide and a broad term, I know. But I want to talk about how we sometimes negate emotions, especially those of us who are in the household of faith, right? So we we believe in what God says. We follow the word of God, but then we oftentimes negate our emotions, which is a part of us, which is God given, which we should not ignore if we want to be whole in our entirety, because we're not just a spirit floating around here, so we have to concern our growth in our mentality beyond just the spirit. So we're talking about our emotions, our mind, our will, and our body, and everything else. So those of you who feel like, you know, you should sweep your emotions under the rug and you should just not pay attention to them, I think we sometimes get overly spiritual when it comes to things, because we have to pay attention to our emotions. God gave us our emotions for a reason. And so while we should not let our emotions control us and let our emotions rule us, we do need to pay attention to them so that can tell us which direction to go. So when we listen to the word of God and we hear what he has to say about things, we can align our emotions with that. But thinking we can just ignore hurt, we can ignore pain, we can ignore feelings, for the sake of trying to be super spiritual, it doesn't work. I've tried it. I know it doesn't work, because at some point in my life, I felt like, I don't know. I mean, it's not that I did have emotions, but I was once told I was too emotional. It really bothered me. It really stuck with me. Like, it's almost like after hearing that, I became very hard on the outside, very, I kind of went into a shell for a moment, almost like, well, dang, I'm going through pure and legitimate hell. I'm going through torment, not of myself. It was a situation I was in, and it lasted for a long span of time. And so when I break down, I'm told I'm too emotional. Maybe that had some truth, but if we really looked at why I was displaying the emotions I was displaying, instead of looking at the manifestations of what I was dealing with. We weren't looking at what I was dealing with to make these particular emotions manifest. I'm not someone who's irrational. I'm not someone who is, I'm a thinker. So for me to have been on a level where I'm almost emotionally out of control, there had to be some sort of detrimental situation going on in my life. And most people wouldn't know that unless they know you, unless they know, so I get it. But that's where we need to have a little bit more empathy, because just because we don't understand how it feels, or we don't see ourselves responding or reacting in a certain way that others do when they are experiencing their challenges, it does not justify our need to assume that they are acting out of character, out of emotion, so much that they don't feel like they're supported. Because yes, people should learn to regulate their emotions, have emotional intelligence. I'm all for that. But for those who haven't learned to do that, the worst thing you can do is shame them. Is shame them into feeling like they've done something wrong for having a response to their trauma. So we have to be very careful about that. And I'm saying this again because I've experienced it myself. And I've worked in behavioral health, and I know it's sometimes hard when we deal with people in situations that we, some things are, for some of us, obviously traumatic, even on the outside looking in. But some things we may just not understand. And to us, it may seem small, but we can't look at it like that because we're all on different levels in this life. We're all, so our goal and our desire, in my opinion, should be to help bring some balance to the lives of people who are experiencing these sort of traumas. Because for me, it may be something that I could say, well, oh, that's not a big deal. I would have just done this or I would have just done that. To them, it could be the difference between keeping or taking their own life. So it's important that we recognize that our feelings are not someone else's. And we're better off not stating any advice or anything to a person who's broken already unless we are sure we know we're going to help them in the right direction. Because one or two things is going to happen. We're going to either make it worse for them or we're going to help lift their spirits, which should be the goal. So we need to stop being so, in my opinion, we need to stop being so quick to judge people about why. I mean, they're not hurt. I'm not talking about people hurting people. I'm talking about someone just going through a personal emotional situation. They're distressed for whatever reason, things going on in their life, and sometimes we get to a place where we're like, well, I don't understand why you just didn't do this, or why you just don't leave him, or why you just don't leave her, or why you just don't do something. It's not that easy. When you have been through trauma, when you have been traumatized and you are in a state of fight or flight and constantly in fear, you don't even know who you are sometimes. Like you can't expect someone in that state to be able to articulate what is best for them. So again, let's be more gentle, more empathetic towards people who are hurting, who are in need of understanding, who are really crying out for someone to be understanding towards them. If nothing else but to tell them to maybe seek therapy, tell them I love you and things are going to be okay. Help in whatever capacity that we can. Now, I know we get some off ones that just don't, they may consume your time and your energy and everything else and continue on doing the same thing, acting the same way. That's not what I'm talking about. I mean, it's a cutoff point for everything, but I'm talking about people who are genuinely decent people. They've just found themselves in a situation where they cannot understand themselves what's going on. So people like myself who have suffered narcissistic abuse and trauma from various sources, that it makes me more empathetic to people who may be going through similar things. Like I didn't understand what I was dealing with until I heard someone give me some wisdom on it. So I know a lot of people are dealing with the same stuff. They just can't put it. They can't assign a name to it. So they're confused. It looks like one thing, and then they're afraid to step away because they think maybe it's gaslighting. It's a psychological battle. And that is a problem. And so again, I'm very empathetic and sympathetic to people who are suffering or who have suffered with this sort of psychological mismanagement. And so again, emotions are important. Emotions are valid, and emotions can be directed into a healthy state in emotional intelligence. But it starts with us being understanding of them, especially those of us in communities where, we frown upon therapy and stuff like that. No, I think we need that. We need the word of God, first of all. And then for your soul, which speaks of your mind, will, and emotions, all of it is Christ-centered and centered around the things of God. But there's a psychological component to it as well that we just cannot negate, no more than we can negate food for our natural body. So we have to learn about emotions, and we have to learn about emotional intelligence and what we're dealing with. And we have to learn about ourselves and what things mean from a psychological perspective, as well as a spiritual, godly, and a biblical perspective. So I hope this helps someone. I thank you so much again for tuning in. Thank you again for liking and subscribing. I hope to see you all soon. Have a good one. And my last thought on concerning emotions. When we are telling people something about themselves that we may be able to see from the outside looking in, because of course, if we're not dealing with a traumatic situation as they are at that moment, we may see a little bit more clearly. It is fruitless to give a statement such as you are too emotional without giving guidance, without giving practical advice in how to become something different and better. So if we're going to tell people about what we see in them, let's make sure we only do so if and only if we have the wisdom and knowledge and understanding of what they're dealing with, so we can guide them in word and thought to in the direction that they should go, that is practical and that is effective. Again, thank you so much. I just had to add that. Have a good one, you all.